Hope this shirt works with this background. It's awfully bright. But you know what? We could probably use a little brightness. Okay, here we go. Wednesday, March 18th, 2020. Day whatever of the COVID madness of 2020. I'm sure you don't need me to give you the update on what's been going on. And, even if I did, that update would be obsolete, right? If you're anything, it's bananas out. It's just bananas right now. And what else can you say? I told my mom today, she's like, how you doing? And I said, it's not even just one day at a time. It's like 1 hour at a time, right? I mean, if you're anything like me, you're at home. If you've got kids, you're at home with your kids. And the stock market is going up and down and all around and crazy. And, people are walking around the neighborhood trying to get some exercise with like very somber looks on their faces. And it's justified if you feel a little bit kind of like out of control. I got a ton of really, really good feedback about the video that I put out a couple days ago about just basic ideas on keeping your marbles and keeping your head on straight during this whole coronavirus craziness. I really got kind of an avalanche of positive feedback. So I thought it might be helpful to get with you for a few minutes here today and talk about, all right, what can you control? How can you put yourself in some semblance of like charge of your life and your situation? Because that's a major key to not losing your marbles and surviving and maybe even thriving through this time. So what I came up with was the idea that, this has been helpful for me, and I know a bunch of my clients as well. The idea of controlling what you can control is always key. It's always key to being your best self, your happiest and most productive. But in times where everything is topsy-turvy and feels more out of control than normal, the idea of controlling what you can control, controlling the controllables, is just paramount to not going completely insane. And so what I've realized is that there's not much that we can control. There's a fair number of things that we can actually influence, but we don't actually control. What I realized is that there's fundamentally two things that I would encourage you to focus on that you have at least a high degree of influence and maybe even control over. Here's what they are. You have a high degree of influence or control over your physical and your verbal. Pay attention to your physical and your verbal. Here's what I mean by those two things. Let's talk about your physical first. When I say you have control over your physical, I mean, number one, you have a pretty high degree of control over your physical environment, right? And by taking some charge of your physical environment, it does an awful lot for your brain to help you raise your energy, put yourself back at cause instead of effect, and actually be able to make a difference with the people that you want to make a difference with, starting with yourself. So here's what that means. Like I said, if you're like me, you're spending an inordinate amount, an unusually high amount of time at home. And so if you're like, okay, how do I feel in control? I would say start with gaining control over at least a small corner, even just a small corner of your physical environment. It's going to do good things for your brain. So I've got two teenage boys. A lot of you know that about me. I'm kind of an early bird. I'm up early and I like to go to bed early. I've got boys who are 14 and 16, and their wiring is they're not early birds. Teenage boys are wired to stay up late and get up late, and they have the opportunity to do that right now because it's the spring break of all spring breaks. And so what happens is they're up much later than I am, and I often wake up early in the morning these days to find that much of our house looks like a frat house, right? They've been Snapchatting and doing their thing. They've been watching some TV and doing their thing, and it's a bit of a disaster in some places. And so what I'm finding is that when I wake up like that, if I look around and go, man, this place is a disaster, that causes some stress. But if I flip that around and go, all right, I'm going to clean up the sink, I'm going to do the dishes, or maybe even like take a common area and just straighten it up so that it's not a pigsty. I find that it's just helpful in helping me get my head on straight. And I imagine it probably would be for you too. It's true that a messy environment can be a sign of a messy mind, but I'll also tell you that a messy mind is caused to a certain extent by a messy environment. So if you start with your physical environment, gain some control over that, you'll find that to be helpful, I think. Two, when I talk about your physical, controlling your physical, I mean you regardless of what your situation is right now, you have a high degree of control over your physical activity. What I'm saying here is go get some exercise. If you don't do anything, get some physical exercise. It doesn't need to be extensive. It doesn't need to be, a 4-hour, session at the gym or whatever, but there really is nothing better for helping you feel in charge than just moving your body. And I would say that you'll do yourself a big favor if you'll maybe pay attention to exercising, not necessarily longer than you normally would, but just with a little bit more intentionality and maybe a little bit more intensity than you normally would. There's a little secret about exercise that it's super helpful in building your immune system because of the connection between exercise and sleep. A lot of us I know right now, watch this, a lot of us are sitting around, we have a lot of thoughts, man, with a lot of mental energy going out, right? Uncertainty, situations are fluid, things change every hour, and so, man, there's a lot of thought energy that's happening, but physically you end up kind of just sitting still. And if you're not careful about that, you can end up in the spot where at the end of the day, you are mentally just exhausted, but physically, you're actually not tired at all. Physically, you've been sedentary all day. If you'll balance that out a little bit and do enough exercise that it actually makes you feel a little physically tired, it'll help you get a much better night of sleep, which is a huge deal for your immune system and your mental health overall. You hear talk about what's called logotherapy, which is using, it's talk therapy. Logos means words. I'm not doing logotherapy right now, but I am doing log therapy. If you looked out in my front yard, I got a great big pile of oak logs that I'm finding great comfort in my ability to bang on those things and split them up into pieces of firewood for myself. And a lot of that is because doing that allows me to get out some physical energy. Find something that you can do that'll allow you to get out some physical energy. It'll help you sleep better at night and just cope with all of this way better. Take charge of your physical in whatever way that you can. The other thing that I said that you can that you have a high degree of control, or at least a very high degree of influence over, is your verbal. Whether you realize it or not, you have a high degree of control over the words that come out of your mouth. You choose those words that come out of your mouth. And those words impact the people around you and the wiring of your brain in very powerful ways. Now, we don't have time here. I want to keep this somewhat brief. We don't have time to do a full-blown lesson on affirmations. Listen, if you drop a comment or if you want to learn more from me about that, because it is something that we teach. But there's one word that I would really encourage you to just pay attention to how you're using it. And how you're using the words around. It's the word but. You can have a powerful influence on how well you're keeping your head on straight, as well as that of your family and the people that you care about, by just paying attention to which side of your butt you're on. And when I say butt, you probably understand I mean the word butt, B-U-T, not B-U-T-T. Yeah, butt's known as the eraser word. And so what it does is whenever you put the word but in the middle of a sentence, it erases whatever came before that and causes only what comes after the word to stick in your mind. Example, if you've ever been in a meeting and somebody said, hey, you're doing a great job, but I have some constructive criticism for you. your brain just doesn't recall, doesn't hang on to the part about how you're doing a great job. It only remembers the constructive criticism, right? Um, so watch this. Inhabiting the idea that this whole COVID madness scenario, inhabiting the idea that it is temporary, is a thought that gives me a great deal of peace of mind, and it calms me down a lot when I go, you know what, this too shall pass. This will be over at some point. That's helpful. But I've been having this conversation with people about how, okay, yeah, this is temporary, but we don't know how long it's going to last. That is a reality, right? That's the source of a lot of angst and stress right now, is that, sure, on some level we know it's temporary, but we don't know how long temporary means. If you catch yourself having that thought of that conversation, I would encourage you to just take a minute, flip that sentence around, because I'm seeing this where when I go, you know what, yeah, we don't know how long this is going to last, but it is temporary. You notice the difference? What you're left with is a feeling that at least allows you to center yourself and calm yourself enough to go deal with the next thing much more effectively. So pay attention to which side of your butt you're going to be on this week. Hey, we're running out of time here. I hope this video has been helpful. If you'd like to hear more about any of this, go ahead and drop a comment, drop a thumbs up, get in touch with me. My contact information is going to be on the screen shortly. I'm here for you. I want to help in any way that I can. Whether it's just looking at my wallpaper behind me, or whether it's just, having somebody who'll give you a smile. I hope I can help. Hang tough. We'll